Bees first appeared on Earth 130 million years ago, and they outlived dinos. What helped them survive for so long is an incredibly complex structure of their society and teamwork. Each bee has its own role and responsibility. Some of them build and repair their home, some bees protect it, others clean the hive and get food. But what if you could sneak into a hive and figure out how this whole system works? What would you see inside? For some mysterious reason, it's easy for you to get past the guards. But if you were a bee from another colony, they wouldn't let you in without a fight. The guard bees look rather intimidating. They stand on their back four legs at the hive's entrance, their front legs raised in the air. These bees inspect every insect entering the hive with their antennae and front legs. Each hive has its own odor, and the guards can understand if a bee belongs to their colony by smelling it. Only the bees that live in the hive can get inside. Suddenly, you see something strange. One of the guard bees has detected an intruder. An alien bee must have mistakenly tried to enter the wrong hive. But it's carrying a load of nectar, and the guard lets it in. Apparently, they don't mind accepting free gifts of food, even from strangers. You feel too curious to linger there any longer. The hive has only one entrance. You notice that the walls around it look strange. You take a closer look and understand that it's coated with a thin layer of some substance. It's propolis, hardened plant resin produced by bees. It helps fight infections and cures different health problems. A bit further, you can see countless honeycombs. They're densely packed hexagonal cells made of beeswax. Bees use them to store food, pollen, and honey. That's where they keep eggs, larvae, and pupae. Honeycombs are fixed to the walls of the hive. They stretch from top to bottom and are even attached to the sides. But you spot narrow passageways along the comb edges. Bees use them to move around the hive. You might also be able to squeeze through one of these tunnels. After exploring the place, you figure out that bees store honey in the upper part of the comb. Beneath, there are cells that contain pollen. Then, there are cells used for keeping eggs with future worker bees. And at the very bottom, there are drone eggs. Of course, your ultimate goal is to see the queen bee, but it's not that easy to find her. First, you come across lots of other bees. Most of them are workers. They make up the largest part of the hive's population, and they're all ladies. Each of them has its own task. The most common of them is foraging. You spot a bee leaving a hive and decide to follow it. The queen can wait a bit. You want to see how bees provide food for the hive. The bee is buzzing ahead of you. After visiting a couple of flowers, it suddenly starts wiggling while hovering in one place. That's the famous bee dance. That's how bees communicate. Once a forager finds a perfect supply of nectar, it starts to perform a very precise dance. It consists of a series of straight lines and figure eights. Throughout the dance, the bee is also shaking its wings. How long the dance lasts means how far away from the hive the nectar is. Every 75 milliseconds is another 330 feet to the distance, and how intense the dance is depends on the richness of the source of the nectar. The stronger the waggle is, the more nectar the bee has found. And there's also the angle of the dance. It shows the direction of the nectar in relation to the sun. Your bee must have found tons of nectar. It's practically vibrating. Suddenly, it starts flying back to the hive. You follow it. There, the bee does a shake dance in front of the other worker bees. This is how it tells other bees they need to go foraging right away. You decide to stay behind and just watch what will happen. Soon, the bees return. They've brought back a lot of nectar that needs to be ripened into honey. Your bee does a tremble dance this time. It's shaking its legs in a way that makes its body tremble all over. This little dance makes other workers get down to process the nectar. It's time for you to resume your search. You dive back into the hive and begin to squeeze through small passageways. You come across the cells where worker bees begin their lives as eggs. It takes a bee 21 days to develop from an egg into a full-grown worker. The first task of this new worker is to clean the cell where it grew. The cell then becomes a nursery for a new egg, and the bee looks after this egg. Later, it feeds the larva and keeps it warm. During the next stage of its life, when it's 12 to 20 days old, the bee starts doing chores around the hive. It produces wax, stores pollen and nectar, builds the comb, guards the entrance, and so on. When the bee turns 20 days old, it becomes a forager. It looks for and delivers pollen, nectar, and tree resin to make propolis. The bee also brings water. Bees need it for drinking and cooling the hive. At one point, you see something that looks like a hospital room? There, worker bees look after those that feel unwell. The doctors bring them different types of honey depending on their infection. If there's no other way, they remove a sick bee from the hive. It helps to prevent the entire colony from getting ill. And then there are also temperature control bees. The temperature in the hive is usually around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. It's crucial to keep it this way, not hotter, not colder. Otherwise, the eggs won't hatch. You see a group of bees and instantly understand they're temperature bees. Apparently, the temperature in the hive has dropped, and now the bees are trying to warm it up. They're vibrating in a special way, which raises their body temperature, and you can feel the air around you become a bit warmer. And if they needed to cool the hive, they would go and gather some water droplets. Then they would bring this water on their backs. Once in the hive, the temperature bees would buzz their wings very fast, making the water evaporate and lower the temperature. You move further and soon come across a bee you haven't seen before. It has huge eyes, a large body, and no stinger. It's a drone, the only kind of male bee in the hive. Drones don't have any foraging tools either. Their only purpose is to mate with the queen and care for her. The drone's life isn't too long. For one thing, if this bee manages to mate with the queen, it never survives the process. And if there's a food shortage or winter is coming, worker bees usually kick drones out of the hive and don't let them back in. Wow, that's harsh. You keep going until you finally notice a nursery. There, you spot a bee that is twice the size of a worker bee. Your quest has come to an end. That's the queen. This bee is the most important one for the hive, because it's the only bee that can lay eggs. Despite her title, the queen doesn't actually rule, and her brain is smaller than that of a worker bee. But she produces special pheromones that influence the mood of the entire hive. The queen also gives birth to every single bee in the colony. When the queen is still a larva, worker bees feed her royal jelly. That's a goop with super high sugar content. A larger cell along with such a diet leads to a bigger body and the future queen's ability to emit the pheromones. When the queen has mated with drones, she returns to the hive. 3 days later, she starts laying eggs and never stops. She works especially hard in the spring, laying one egg every 20 seconds. No wonder that later in the year, the colony already has a population of 30,000 to 60,000 bees. But wait, something strange is happening here. A group of worker bees, in fact lots of them, might be half the colony, leave the hive with the queen leading them. It means the colony has become too big. The queen goes outside for the first time since mating, and the whole swarm sets off in search of a new home. Back in the hive, a new queen hatches from an egg 8 days later.
Doink! What was that on your arm? A bee. Great. Not exactly a pleasant feeling. Painful, itchy, annoying, scary. We've all been there before. So, that happens because the bee jabs its barbed stinger into your skin and releases some venom. The venom contains proteins that cause pain and can affect your immune system and skin cells. But that's nothing compared to what the bee has to go through. Poor little thing. You'll be fine after a few hours, but the bee? Not so much. Honeybees don't usually sting people unless they feel threatened or if you accidentally step on them. The problem is that after stinging you, the bee can't pull its barbed stinger out of your skin. The only way to get free is to leave the stinger behind. The stinger, though, not just a sweet defense mechanism, it also contains part of the bee's digestive tract, nerves, and muscles that are, unfortunately, essential for the bee to function normally. So, yep, after losing all that, this tiny creature doesn't survive. Yikes. Poor little bee. Apart from that, they're such cool animals. They have 5 eyes, 2 pairs of wings, and 6 legs. Bees have excellent survival instincts, and they've been around for a really long time. 130 million years and counting. Who knows what ancient species they've stung? Most bees in the hive are called worker bees, and the big cheese is called the queen. She lays around 2,000 eggs per day. Sound like a lot? Well, the average hive contains 50,000 bees, and they disappear after just one sting. I guess going through a painful and itchy experience doesn't actually sound that bad when you only have one bee on your arm. Imagine if you had the whole hive. It may seem like bees just aimlessly fly around or use their vision to decide where they go. But these cool insects are pretty organized and rely on a super complex transport system. Imagine planning a cross-country road trip, only this time, there are no roads. I can't even make it to the gym without my GPS, or if I stop at a burger joint on the way there. But not bees. They're way cooler than us. They use beelines. Well, I call them that. They're basically a series of insect pathways bees tend to follow through human towns or the countryside. These pathways link every existing wildlife area together. It's like a bee railway system. My favorite bee is the buff-tailed bumblebee. It has an oval-shaped body covered in dense hair and a brain the size of a poppy seed. Considering how small it is, that's really impressive. How smart are they? Scientists made an experiment where they trained a bunch of them to play bee soccer. They even learned how to score a goal in return for a sweet sugary treat. Unbelievable! These same bees have another amazing ability. They use their smelly footprints to distinguish between the scents of strangers, their own bee relatives. They can even recognize their own scent. Bumblebees, we know your dirty little secret. You have smelly feet. And then there's the queen bee. She's unique in her colony, and her main task? Laying eggs. People often assume the queen is there to tell the other bees exactly what to do. Yeah, not really. She does have a certain influence, but even without her, the hive actually functions pretty well. Each bee has a job and knows its daily functions and tasks because of its instincts and the chemical signals it senses and uses. So, I guess no one needs to tell them how to behave. Those chemical signals are their way of communicating. Oh, and they know how to shake it. They wiggle their bodies at specific angles for a certain amount of time. That's how they send messages to each other. If something happens to the queen bee and she doesn't survive, worker bees create a new one. Yep, they don't find one, but sort of raise a new one. They choose a young larva and feed the future Her Majesty a special food called royal jelly. That lucky larva can now grow into the new queen. Bees are fast. They can beat their wings almost 200 times a second. Those 8 push-ups I can do in a minute, not sounding so impressive. Each bee produces around 1 teaspoon of honey in its lifetime. To produce 1 pound of honey, bees have to fly the equivalent of 1 whole time around the globe. These hardworking animals make around 100 million trips to about 200 million flowers to collect enough nectar for that pound of honey. Honeybees sleep 5 to 8 hours a day, and just like us, they rest at night. Their brains are pretty active when they're resting. Some scientists think they may be dreaming, also just like us. When winter rolls around, a lot of insects replace their body water with a special chemical called glycerol. It's a type of natural antifreeze that helps them stay alive in low temperatures. Bees, though, they just huddle together in the hive to stay toasty warm. Alright, enough about bees. Let's whip round the animal kingdom looking for crazy facts. Bats could eat 1,000 insects an hour if they were insanely hungry. They're the only mammal that can fly, and their bones are so thin, most of them can't even walk. Insects, for the most part, don't have ears on their heads. Instead, they have them all over their bodies. Snails can sleep for 3 years without waking up. Slugs have 4 noses, so they better avoid those stinky feet bumblebees. Butterflies are quite simple and practical animals that taste with their feet and only feed on liquids. They're cold-blooded, so if it gets below 55 degrees, they can't fly, look for food, or escape a sticky situation. Their main defense tactic is camouflage. Works pretty well until it gets cold. The opposite strategy is having vibrant, colorful patterns that let everyone know where you are. Colorful insects are often toxic, so birds and bigger insects tend to leave them alone. Wasps recognize their relatives by identifying unique facial patterns. Ants don't have lungs. Instead, they breathe through small holes all over their bodies. Also, they almost never sleep, but they do love to nap. Ants are incredibly strong and can carry more than 50 times their own weight. If you were that strong, you'd be able to carry an adult elephant. You know, like if it's stepping on your toe and you want to get it off you. For every human, there are more than 1 million ants, and over 200 million insects. Luckily, they're smaller than us. If they weren't, we'd be the ants. You can hypnotize a frog if you place it on its back and gently stroke its stomach with your fingers. What if that worked on humans? Hey, wanna hang out? I know a sloth does. Its weird biology allows it to spend most of its life just hanging upside down from a tree. A sloth is so slow it takes around a month to totally digest food. Rhinos have horns made out of the same stuff as hair. Scientists trained pigeons to be able to tell the difference between famous artists Claude Monet and Pablo Picasso. Okay, wait. Even pigeons are smarter than me now? Just when you think pandas can't get any cuter, check this out. When they're born, pandas weigh around 4 ounces and are smaller than a mouse. Animals that have a super fast metabolism inside a small body, like squirrels do, see in slow motion. They evolved this feature to be able to escape bigger animals. That's cool. When you think about it, it really makes them powerful. Squirrels usually run away from their enemies by scampering off in a zigzag pattern. Because? No idea. Sorry, people. They tend to bury their food in many different places. Since it's impossible to keep an eye on all their hiding spots, Other animals like to sneak over and steal their goods. That's why squirrels sometimes only pretend to bury their food somewhere, to throw off any potential thieves. Oh, how nutty of them! An ostrich has a brain smaller than its eye, but it has really strong legs. It can run faster than a horse. Flamingos only eat when their heads are turned upside down. Bzzz. The sound you hear when bees aren't around doesn't come from their mouths. You hear it because they're beating their wings while flying really fast. When they're in the air, their wings make vibrations the human ear recognizes as buzzing. It's especially loud when it comes to smaller insects. Bigger bees have slower wing beats, which means the pitch of the buzzing gets lower. Insects buzz to get pollen off the flower as they move their bodies and wings. The pollen then attaches to the bee. It flies towards the next flower and deposits the pollen there. This process is called pollination. You will also hear buzzing when they're defending their hives or themselves, especially if you get too close to a bee in its natural habitat. This buzzing sound is like some kind of a warning to move away, or get ready to face the angry bee. Ouch! That was a painful one. But hey, what? Ouch! Was that another sting? In that case, it's not a honeybee. A honeybee can only sting once. When it does, you can see the small stinger protruding on your skin. Once that's done, the bee can no longer pull the stinger back out. Since the stinger has nerves, muscles, and is part of the bee's digestive tract, the bee doesn't survive. Yellow jackets are a type of wasp that doesn't have such a problem. They will sting you multiple times, as much as possible. Unlike plenty of bees, yellow jackets have a stinger without a barb. It's no fun being around them or running into their nests, which provides home to thousands of jackets, or up to 50,000 in just one summer. They don't produce the buzzing sound like bees either. That happens because of differences in their behavior. Bumblebees and honeybees fly from one flower to another and gather pollen and nectar, which is also food for the colonies. If you see them flying around at grass level, they're probably collecting food they'll later take to their nest. Yellow jackets aren't that much into flowers, so they don't need to shake their wings as intensively as bees. They don't transfer or collect pollen. These wasps are predators that prefer spiders, insects, and decaying fruit. If you're having a picnic with a basket full of tasty food, get ready for an unwanted visit. Cover the food to keep them away. Their most active time is late summer and early fall. Jackets start their colony in the spring. The lone queen does it by herself. She needs to survive the harsh winter conditions first, after which she lays eggs. The colony then grows through spring and summer. When the winter comes, the old queen is done with her work, so she can now pass the crown to the new queen that will start the next cycle. None of the other wasps survive either. Both yellow jackets and bees have black and yellow bodies and are almost the same size. Bees are more hairy and chunky, while yellow jackets are not that furry or fat. They're more smooth and slender. Wasps also have a waist. It attaches their abdomen to the thorax, the body part between the midsection and the head. Honeybees live in tree holes in nests beekeepers provide them with. Jackets prefer to make their nests in exposed pipes, holes, in walls, old furniture, or even below the ground. They find some old rodent burrows and often make their nests in lawns on spots with no grass, so it's easier to accidentally step on them or disturb them with a lawnmower. Yellow jackets are way more aggressive and fierce than bees since they're predators and have a really strong instinct to protect their nests. They tend to go after people for violating their peace and will follow you over a long distance if necessary. They'll pass all obstacles and wait for their moment. If you're running away from them, don't go into the water and dive in because they'll be patiently waiting for you to run out of breath to take their revenge. Don't run in panic waving your arms around because they'll probably be faster and way more frustrated as they see you as a threat. Just raise your hands and protect the eyes first, then slowly start moving away. Honeybees sting when they really don't have another choice. They're not mean by their nature. Neither they nor wasps are hostile if they don't feel threatened. Yellow jackets are way easier to provoke than bees. When they see something they find dangerous coming towards, they release certain chemicals that alert the family, so they'll chase you. Wasps can make a nest from paper. First, they chew up pieces of bark and then spit it out, which is how they make a paper rougher. They all look the same to us, But wasps can recognize each other by identifying unique facial patterns they all have. They come in crazy colors including green, blue, red, and orange. The smallest insect in the world is a parasite wasp, often called a fairy fly. Male wasps are blind, don't have wings, and they're only 0.005 inches long. There are over 30,000 species of wasps, but two groups in general. Social wasps live in colonies, and solitary wasps prefer to have their nests on their own and live alone with their young. Social wasps use the stingers as a way to defend themselves. Solitary wasps use them for hunting, together with the venom they have inside. Solitary wasps aren't into stinging people and won't go after us. They help humans by taking care of insect populations on their plates. Mud dauber wasps are close relatives to ants. The ants started out as some sort of predatory wasp themselves. But ants are even more related to bees than to social wasps, and they all have the same family tree. They have spread all over the Earth's dry land, populating virtually every imaginable ecosystem. There are more than 10,000 trillion ants on our planet at any moment. One study of a Brazilian rainforest says the overall mass of the ants that lived in that area was around 4 times bigger than the mass of all reptiles, mammals, and amphibians together. Ants are social creatures that live in pretty big colonies. They cover different roles: defending the nest, looking for food, rearing their young, or building nests. Not only their cousins can make a painful sting, ants are fierce too. Bullet ants have the most painful sting of them all, and they live in humid jungle areas like the Amazon. Fire ants wreak billions of dollars worth of damage every year. The total amount includes the cost of medical and veterinary bills to treat their bites. They might be tiny, but have a pretty painful bite that makes you feel like your skin is burning. That's how they got their name. Some bugs out there can only live for a couple of days or even hours, but ants are among the longest living insects. The queen ant of some species lives up to 30 years. They are some of the world's strongest animals, considering their size. A single ant lifts and carries a burden that's 50 times its body weight. They appreciate teamwork, so you'll often see them working together to move some bigger objects. Ants live on all continents except for Antarctica, same as their cousin wasps. Ants don't have ears. Instead of listening, they feel vibrations coming from the ground. Some don't even have eyes, so they communicate with others using the antennae. Also, they send messages to each other over chemical signals they release through the body. They leave trails of chemical signals that lead to some food sources or to attract a partner. They also send out warnings when they sense there's danger nearby the same way. Their biggest nest ever discovered was more than 3,700 miles wide. It was found in 2000 in Argentina. 33 ant populations got together and created one enormous supercolony with millions of nests and billions of ants working and living there.
Mosquitoes, bedbugs, fleas, beetles, gadflies, millions of insects out there can't wait to feast on the most delicious dessert, you. Especially if it's warm outside and you sweat a little. The good news is that not many bugs want to eat you. It's estimated that there are about 10 million species of insects in the world, and only 14,000 of them feed on your vital fluid. A few hundred among this group regularly bite people. Okay, yeah, it's still too many. But it wasn't always like that. In the distant past, insects didn't dare to attack huge animals for food. They developed their ability to feed on blood from 200 to 65 million years ago. And there are several theories why this happened. Imagine small beetles and insects living in the nest of some flying dinosaur or a giant ancient bird. They feed on bird secretions, rotten grass, leaves, or mushrooms. Then a piece of skin or a feather of an animal falls on their table. Insects taste it, and they like it. Then a dinosaur arrives, and the beetles sense a familiar smell. They climb on its skin and bite it, or they accidentally fall on an open sore of a bird and taste it. For insects, this would be the most delicious thing they had ever eaten. Yeah, I agree, it's a pretty low bar. Now, other insects have a long, thin feeding tube called a proboscis. They use it to feed on plant sap or other smaller insects. And now, one of these beetles sits on a wounded mammal and accidentally bites it. The beetle's body already has the right enzyme capable of digesting blood. So, from that moment on, the beetle doesn't want to eat anything other than red nectar. The beetle bears offspring, and it takes over the ability to feed on blood. Imagine you've been eating grass and leaves all your life, and then you try some sweet banana pudding. You wouldn't want to go back to eating good old grass now. You'd always want dessert. Insects had the same feeling when they tasted nutritious blood. Yumbo! One of the coolest theories says the thirst for blood in insects was caused by microbes. Blood isn't an ideal food for beetles. It doesn't have enough vitamins or nutrients for them. That's why a whole ecosystem of microorganisms had to form inside their intestines. These bacteria can synthesize some essential vitamins with the help of blood. These bacteria won't survive if they stop feeding on that red fluid. And when these bacteria disappear, insects have problems with development and reproduction. It's impossible to name the exact reason, since the transition from plant food to animal food happened a very long time ago. Since then, evolution has created a variety of ways to extract blood. The most famous blood-dependent species are, of course, mosquitoes. Only female mosquitoes need blood to produce eggs. When mosquitoes fly, they feel the heat, carbon dioxide, and lactic acid in the air. These smells attract the mosquitoes, so they fly to their source, an animal or a human. Then the mosquito lands on its prey and inserts its proboscis into the skin. At the same time, it secretes saliva to prevent clotting. The unpleasant skin sensation you get after the bite is an allergic reaction of your body to the mosquito saliva. Then the female produces eggs and leaves the larva in stagnant water. It could be a pond, a drain, or an outdoor pool. Small mosquitoes feed on organic substances in the water, then grow up and go on their first hunt. Black flies also feed on blood, but they don't do it as carefully as mosquitoes. The female black fly lands on the prey, uses its sharp jaws to cut the skin, and devours its lunch. Fortunately, they don't bother people too much. Their main target is livestock and wild animals. Horseflies and deerflies are the real human enemies. Their bite is quite painful. Ordinary flies that live on the street and inside human houses are super annoying, and they can feast on your skin without even biting you. Everything they need from you lies on the surface. You secrete sweat, proteins, carbs, salts, sugar, and other chemicals that the fly collects with its proboscis. And of course, it hardly understands that you're a living being and don't want to share your food with it. That's why a fly isn't afraid of you. You probably noticed that some people get bitten by insects more often than others. You could be going for a walk in the park and they get all over you, but your friend walking right next to you wouldn't feel anything. Hey, just means you're a sweetie. Scientists used to believe that some people actually just don't feel it when they get bitten. Their body doesn't have such a strong reaction to mosquito saliva. But recent studies have shown the number of bites depends on genetics and many other factors. Around 10 to 20% of people are just more attractive to predatory insects. How lucky or unlucky are they? Mosquitoes use a variety of senses to choose the perfect prey. They have carbon dioxide and humidity sensors. They also distinguish the odors of hundreds of different chemicals released by humans. Each smell has a specific meaning for different types of mosquitoes. There are thousands of nuances and shades of odors that can attract some mosquitoes and repel others. The mosquitoes that are more aggressive like things that ordinary mosquitoes can't smell. Some mosquitoes go for your legs, others like your neck. The food and drinks you consume play an important role in that too. They change the smell of your skin. The thickness of the skin, the amount of heat released, shades of color, and your blood type, all of that matters to insects. But there's something that attracts almost all insects. It's the smell of sweat. The dirtier you are, the more attractive you are to them. The unpleasant smell of sweat is created by millions of bacteria gathered on your skin. They attract mosquitoes. Some species like fresh sweat. Others prefer stale sweat with an unpleasant aroma. But if you're clean, you'll become invisible to most of the little flying monsters. The smell also depends on your genetic features. The structure of your DNA directly affects the smells you release. That's why you can say that some people are sweeter when it comes to mosquito tastes. But mosquito bites are really nothing compared to those of fire ants. When it munches on your skin, it feels like it's on fire. These ants are especially dangerous for people with allergies. Puss caterpillar is a beautifully vicious creature. It doesn't need to bite you to hurt you. This insect, also known as the southern flannel moth, is covered with thick fur hiding many poisonous thorns. A small prick with these spines, and you need medical assistance immediately. The Asian giant hornet is one of the most dangerous and painful insect bites of all. One hornet can be the size of a person's thumb, and its sting resembles a real needle. It's almost 3 times the size of a bee. These aggressive creatures can bite through clothes and even beekeepers' outfits. They attack in a huge swarm and can cause serious trouble to any animal. To fight them, people wear thick protective suits that look like spacesuits. But the main danger is that hornets attack beehives and greatly reduce the bee population. This can lead to a catastrophe on a planetary scale. Our planet and humanity need bees, not only because they produce honey. Bees pollinate flowers and plants. About a third of the world's food production would be impossible without bees. Cows eat vegetation that bees pollinate, and if all bees disappeared, it would greatly affect not only the health of cows, but all other cattle as well. A lot of fruits and berries would lose their rich taste if the bees stopped serving them. We get most of the cotton on the planet thanks to bees as pollinators. There would be a shortage of jeans and other clothes if the bees disappeared. The taste of many products would deteriorate, and the food would lose its useful properties. Whole species of flowers would disappear from the face of our planet. Humanity would have a really difficult time without bees. That would be a disaster, and that's another reason why giant hornets are so dangerous, and they gotta go, if you ask me. Now, it's obvious who can win a fight between a bee and a giant hornet. It's like a battle between a kitten and a saber-toothed tiger. And an army of bees against an army of hornets is like hundreds of kittens against hundreds of lions. It seems the hornets will win because one hornet can destroy more than 1,000 bees in less than an hour and a half. But if this battle happens in real life, it will be more complicated, dramatic, and unexpected than you can imagine. A group of bees works all day. They pollinate plants and fruits and collect nectar from flowers. They work hard and return home to the hive at the end of the day. They don't notice an imposter flying among them, a giant hornet. It's bigger than one bee, but has the same yellow-black color. No one pays any attention to it. The imposter enters the bee house without an invitation and makes a crackling sound. That's how its jaws snap. Hungry and angry, it begins the feast. In a matter of seconds, the hornet puts the hive into chaos. The hornet has a sting with toxic venom, but it can go without it here. For bees, the monster uses its sharp jaws. The hive citizens attack the enemy, but it doesn't feel a thing. The situation is getting worse because bees can't live after using their sting. They sacrifice their lives to protect their home, to protect the queen. Unfortunately, all their attempts are in vain. After quenching its thirst, the hornet flies away to find new prey. Only one bee manages to survive. It escapes from the hive to warn the others. The bee visits every hive in the valley and reports the powerful enemy. All bees start preparing to attack. They're raising an army. Unfortunately, this is not enough. The giant hornet visits a new hive, but this time bees are ready. They attack the enemy from all sides. For a moment, it seems bee stings are working. The hornet is weakening, its activity is falling. The hope of victory inspires bees with confidence, but not for long. At this moment, 10 other hornets fly into the hive. The first hornet marked the hive with a unique pheromone before the battle. This smell attracted its friends, and now the bees have no chance. In the wild, hornets leave the trace so others can find the tagged location. In a few minutes, 11 hornets destroy the hive of 25,000 bees. Recently, this sunny land was blooming thanks to bees. Now it has turned into a lifeless valley. Giant hornets don't want to spend time searching for hives, so they divide into groups and fly to different sides of the valley. They mark bee houses with the pheromone and start a large-scale cleanup. Their hunger and thirst for destruction are insatiable. Yeah, bees now know their enemy and notice it as soon as a hornet appears in the air, but it doesn't help. In each battle, they use a lot of strategies to fight it. Once bees tried to attack a hornet hive, but it was a pointless mission. No one pollinates flowers anymore. No one makes honey. Bees live in fear and are afraid to fly out of their hives. In this dark hour, when almost no hope's left, a slight chance of victory appears. A species of Japanese bees learned to defeat the enemy. The news spread all over the hives. The strategy seems to be working. They've managed to fight off several giant hornets. The fear goes away, and the bees are ready to fight again. In the real world, these bees learn to fight giant hornets, but other species can't do that. So bees are waiting for the enemy. They all know what to do. Finally, a giant hornet appears. Hundreds of bees attack it and wrap it with their bodies from all sides. They completely cover the hornet and start to tremble. The simultaneous vibration of all the bees heats up the enemy. The temperature is getting higher. The hornet can't get out. Bees seem to burn it with the energy of their bodies. A few minutes later, the giant hornet falls. Bees throw it out of the hive. Now they are confident of their victory. Another hornet arrives. Tired bees attack it and start to vibrate again. The next monster is coming, and another one. 10, 20, 100 hornets arrive. Bees don't have so many resources and energy. The chances to win are zero again. To win once and for all, the bees must unite. All the hives, hundreds of millions of bees. A huge, lifeless meadow is the location for the final battle. All the bees of the valley flock here. They are ready for the last fight. Silence ensues. Then the air begins to vibrate. You can hear the buzzing of hornets from afar. They have increased their population hundreds of times because none of the animals can resist them. The defeat of bees is inevitable, but no one is going to back down. Two swarms collide with each other. This is not a battle. This is destruction. Hundreds of thousands of bees, but zero hornets fall to the ground in a few minutes. A whole species of insects are disappearing from the planet. But what is it? The field plugs into a strange fog. Bees and hornets don't see each other. Then, through the white veil, they appear. Silhouettes of giant creatures. They come into the middle of the action. Thousands of hornets attack them, but it's all pointless. Bees quickly fall down and lose consciousness. The hornets pass out too. Some are trying to fly away, but the fog doesn't let them. All insects fall asleep. Someone used gas to stop this fight, and this someone is the bees' main ally. A human has come into the game. In thick protective suits, people picked up euthanized hornets from the ground. They put them in one basket and the bees in another. The collection of insects lasts for several hours. Then the bees wake up in their hives unharmed. Hornets wake up in special containers. They're trapped, and now they can't hurt anyone. People are destroying hornets' nests all over the world. They won't allow them to multiply. Bees are responsible for the cycle of life in nature. They help many plants to reproduce, thanks to pollination. Bees serve as berries and fruits we eat. They take care of flowers that cows and other livestock feed on. Thanks to bees, we grow a lot of cotton. If the hornets destroy them, there will be a shortage of clothes made of this material. T-shirts, jeans, jackets, all this will be more expensive and then will disappear from the markets. Many products will lose their rich taste and useful properties. Animals and people won't get enough vitamins. Cows won't produce milk. There will be no cheese, sour cream, butter, and other food. You won't be able to order a juicy burger at the restaurant. Eggplants, hot peppers, kiwi, blueberries, cranberries, and much more will disappear from the counter. Whole species of animals and plants will stop existing. This will lead to other crises, not only in agriculture, but also in the global economy. Meanwhile, the number of hornets will be growing. There are almost no animals in the world to control them. If people don't do anything, everyone will have to wear thick protective suits to walk outside. Hornets will get into houses and cars, attack people and pets. One giant hornet can cause a lot of trouble. Its sting is one of the most dangerous and painful among all other insects. It's like a red-hot needle. When a hornet sticks it into an opponent, it injects the poison into the skin. This toxin dilates the walls of blood vessels. The area around the bite turns red. This can last for several hours or even days. The hornet is an aggressive creature. It can sting several times. Imagine what a group of these insects can do. To escape, you need to hide in bushes with dense foliage or jump into the water. After the hornets fly away, urgently contact the hospital. Hornets can make people's lives worse. It's important to fight them. Unfortunately, bees can't do this. They're absolutely defenseless. Humanity is aware of this danger and does everything to control the hornet's population. That's why giant hornets have no chances in this fight. Now, every bee returns to its usual way of life: pollination, nectar extraction, honey production in hives. The valley is blooming again. Bees can sleep peacefully. People monitor the situation and watch for giant hornets. If one enemy appears, it means there's a nest somewhere. Special services track down the insects and find nests under old trees and in pits.
A wildlife administrator at an airport can escort a deer off the airfield. They can keep a family of ducks away from the airport's wet pond. They can even shoo off wayward raccoons hiding in terminal buildings. What they can't do is deal with honeybees. In August 2012, hundreds of thousands of honeybees swarmed the body of a Delta plane heading to New York City. It happened when the crew was preparing to fuel the aircraft and load the luggage. It was time for master beekeeper Stephen Rapaski to come into play. At that time, it was already the fourth swarm the airport had to deal with in the past few months. And when in May 2012, more than 15,000 bees covered a light on taxiway C, it caused a serious flight delay. That's when the airport's wildlife administrator started to Google nearby beekeepers. Luckily, he came across Mr. Rapaski, who was later employed as a contractor. An ostrich babysitter's job is mostly stopping little ostriches from running off or pecking at one another. These specialists spend hours on end sitting and observing their charges. This work is far from simple and relaxing, though. Ostriches are known for being territorial and quick to anger. If they feel threatened, they can even charge at a person. An ostrich babysitter can never leave their guard down. Otherwise, one of the birds they're responsible for will immediately get into trouble. A legal bank robber is also called a penetration tester. These people test if banks have an appropriate level of security. In the past, the profession was rather straightforward. You had to literally break into a bank. These days, fake robbers still exist. But there are also specialists who check computer security and deal with identity theft. They can even impersonate police officers and try to install surveillance cameras in the vaults. A scuba diving pizza delivery person works in an underwater hotel in Florida. This specialist dons their scuba gear and sets off on the mission. They supply hotel guests with freshly baked hot pizza carried through the sea in a watertight container. A pet food tester's job is a combination of a researcher and a tester. It's often someone with a doctoral degree. This specialist doesn't taste pet food, they test it. They mainly analyze the food's nutritional value. They write all kinds of reports and look for ways to improve the already existing foods. Before actually trying the food, a tester smells it. Not every pet owner will want their kitchen to reek of fish. After that, it's time for tasting food. Testers are supposed to evaluate its texture, consistency, and flavor. Once it's done and noted down, they spit out the food. A nail polish namer looks at a newly invented color of nail polish and tries to describe it in a couple of words. They either think of what it looks like or how it makes them feel. Not so long ago, NASA and the European Space Agency needed professional sleepers. These organizations were ready to pay each of the 24 volunteers aged between 24 and 55 more than $18,000. These people were supposed to spend 60 days lying in beds. They could read, play games on their phones, watch their favorite series. The only thing they couldn't do was get up. Plus, their beds had to be angled down toward the head end by 6 degrees. This way, scientists wanted to check how artificial gravity would affect the human body. One of the benefits of a golf ball diver's profession is working outdoors at all times. This person is in charge of collecting golf balls from the bottom of ponds on golf courses. It sounds like a simple and exciting job, but most of these ponds aren't taken care of regularly. That's why divers have to search for golf balls in muddy water with loads of algae. Sometimes they even have to deal with snakes. A coconut safety engineer protects people from getting hit on their heads by falling coconuts. The consequences of such accidents are usually extremely unpleasant. That's why a coconut specialist climbs palm trees, often towering up to 60 feet high, and picks ripened coconuts. This way, they don't fall down on the heads of unsuspecting tourists. A potato chip sorter searches for clumped or overcooked chips when those are moving down the assembly line. Once they see a piece that looks off, they immediately get rid of it. Amsterdam is one of the most bicycle-friendly cities in the world, and it's probably no wonder that hundreds of bicycles end up in the city's countless canals. Bicycle fishers pull more than 14,000 bikes out of the waterways every year. Most of these two-wheelers are old and rusty. A drying paint watcher is usually hired by a company to attentively observe the paint as it dries. They need to pay attention to any changes in the paint's color and texture. A skilled watcher should be able to do it both on the wall and under a microscope. This process helps to figure out how durable the paint is and make sure it won't fall off at the slightest touch. A drying paint watcher may also spend days painting sheets of cardboard. This helps to check new paint mixes, for example, how long it takes them to dry completely. A wrinkle chaser makes sure there are no unwanted wrinkles on shoes when they leave the factory. Their job description includes, for example, ironing wrinkles from shoes and shoe parts. To do that, a wrinkle chaser uses either a heated iron or a hot air blower. Sometimes it can be a special awl-shaped device. Paper towels have either a light pleasant aroma or no smell at all. A paper towel sniffer is the very person who makes sure of that. These specialists are hired by manufacturers who want to confirm their production doesn't have an undesirable stench. Unfortunately, it's almost impossible to land this position. It's likely to be the tiniest job niche out there. It's a water slide tester's responsibility to check whether water slides in hotels and water parks are both fun and safe. Let's say you get yourself this job and start working as a water slide tester for a big travel agency or a hotel chain. Then you'll spend most of your time on the move, traveling from one water park to another. Once you're there, you change into some swimming outfit and make it to the pool. You're supposed to take tons of trips down the slide. Pay attention to how fast you get down, how much water the slide uses, and how exciting the entire experience is. Sunglasses doctors work at large tropical resorts. Their main tasks are cleaning sunglass lenses, tightening screws, and solving all kinds of eyewear-related crises guests might have. A sunglasses doctor usually patrols the hotel territory in the afternoon, wearing a utility belt with special tools. A furniture tester is a person who tests beds, including pillows and mattresses. Hotels and other companies hire these people to literally sleep at work. Even though it sounds like a dream job, a good bed tester has to know a lot. For example, how to check if a mattress has dips by laying on it in a special manner, or how to figure out whether the edges of a bed are sturdy enough to sit on. A chewing gum chewer, also called gumologist, spends their days chewing gum. They test its texture and flavor. They also need to describe how their mouth feels during and after the chewing process. Some days, a gum chewer has to blow lots of bubbles, depending on the stage of the project. But their main responsibility is researching and creating new flavors. If you don't have time to stand in line or you find this process boring and tiring, you can hire a professional line stander. For a fee, they'll replace you when you have a line for hours on end. For example, to get a sample sales item or a newly launched product. People with pretty hands, beautiful fingers, or nice feet can become body part models. Such professionals are often very well paid. They take part in photo shoots that advertise and promote particular products, for example, jewelry, nail polish, or hand cream. Dog surfing coaches are sometimes hired by hotels to teach guests' dogs how to surf. It turns out pooches often learn to surf much faster than their humans. Marmite tasters have to taste every batch of the famous food spread made from yeast extract. They check whether the product has the necessary texture and consistency. They also pay attention if its taste is within the range of acceptable Marmite flavors. Inside chimneys, on tree limbs, garages, support beams, and attics, you can find their nests everywhere around the house. They're not only going to ruin your picnic and mess with your food, or try to sting you if you make them angry, but they'll look for sheltered areas in your backyard to build a nest, most commonly in the ceiling of the covered outdoor porch. The important thing is to find a place that can support the weight of their home and the entire community. This is what paper wasps like to do, a group among 30,000 different wasp species. You can recognize them by the way they build their nests. The queen wasp starts building the first structure on her own. The males add on to it later. When you see a larger group of wasps flying in a similar direction, follow them. They leave their nest a couple of times a day to gather food, but they always go back to take care of their young and their queen. Also, they're buzzing pretty loudly while building a nest, so... Oh, there it is! Let's take a closer look at their nest and check what's inside. They're mostly umbrella-shaped, made of gray papery material. Wasps build it out of pulp or saliva. Their nests can get pretty big. The biggest wasp nest found was 18 feet across and 12 feet long. Paper wasps build smaller nests, while hornets, another wasp species, create bigger ones shaped like a football. The outer part is the hardest. Cells there are wider and denser. The root is the foundation the whole nest is built off of. Inside, you can see cells. It's where the larvae are. Wasps are similar to butterflies. They're part of a special group of insects that go through a metamorphosis, a process where an animal's body changes when becoming an adult. These cells are actually cribs for younger wasps that are about to grow up. As wasps build nests, they leave these cells open. The queens are in charge. They lay the eggs in these cells and seal them off. Cells look like hollow cylinders. They form some sort of hexagon, which holds the other cells. Inside the nest, everything's compact so that many of these cells can fit in a very tight space and still have an incredibly strong structure. Cells are the crib and the cocoon at the same time. Their size is big enough to fit the larvae together with its roommates. Grown-up wasps often leave some food with the egg, so the young, after it hatches, has the meal served. You can see the drones, which are male wasps, circle around from cell to cell. They want to make sure everything's okay and each larva has enough food. Nests need to be at a stable temperature with high humidity because of larvae. That's why wasps are working hard to insulate the nest. Such nests mostly have domes built of plant material, saliva, or paper. A wasp is roaming around looking for the proper material. When it finds wood, it chews it up, mixing it with saliva. This way, the wasp makes the strong glue and lays it in thin layers. But layers need to be dense to make the entire nest stronger and sturdier. Ta-da! The core is done! The queen then wraps the nest in some sort of an envelope. Light, thin sheets made of macerated pulp. It protects the cells inside and limits the entrance, so you can only go inside through one tiny hole. This way, they can easily maintain the internal humidity and temperature. If you're looking for honey, the wrong hive. Bees have it, not wasps. They mostly have black and yellow bodies, although wasps come in many different colors like blue, orange, green, red. Wasps and bees are almost the same size. Bees are chunkier and have more hair. Wasps are thinner and smoother. They have a waist and a narrow petiole. They both pollinate flowers, even though wasps do it a little bit less than bees because they don't have so much fine hair on their bodies, so the pollen can't stick to it. Bees farm nectar to produce honey, which is the food of their larvae. Wasps are way more aggressive. They eat meat, which means they bring other insects and bugs for their young, or their remains. Wasps identify each other by scent, but also, just like we do, by unique facial patterns. They are the first case where scientists discovered animals identifying faces the way humans do. Queens recognize other queens, and they're constantly battling to set up a hierarchy in the colony. That means each wasp knows who's in charge of work or food distribution, and who's there to bring the new larvae into this world. Wasps have a rich social life, so they need to memorize lots of faces and also distinguish wasps that live in their nest from those that don't. Wasps are useful for humans because they eat insects, and by that control the population of bugs that destroy crops. Wasps put so much effort to build their nests, and still, they only last when it's warm outside. They start building it from spring and live there until fall. The worker wasps don't survive cold winters. Only some queens do because they have something similar to antifreeze in their blood. They're in charge of creating a new life for the new nest the next year. When a wasp colony is gone, some other species use their nests, like hoverflies. They look similar to wasps, but they survive winter. Just like wasp queens, hoverflies hibernate in sheltered places with a nice temperature, so abandoned wasp nests seem perfect. Hornets even come to active nests when wasps are still there and feed on debris. They don't even get stung. Only female wasps can sting, and they do it when defending themselves. A wasp queen can live up to a year, and worker wasps up to 22 days. Paper wasp colonies are mostly small. They have 100 to 200 cells and up to 100 adults. Some bigger nests will have 400 cells, but yellow jackets build super nests you really want to stay away from. They have up to 15,000 worker wasps. Don't look up in tree canopies or outside of the house to find their nests. Instead, look within your walls or down so you don't stomp on them, because they build underground nests. Even though they're smaller than other wasp species, they're way more aggressive. Yellow jackets have strong instincts when it comes to protecting the nest, so they'll get mad if you violate their peace and try to sting you multiple times. They can do it, unlike bees that can only sting once. Bees will jab their barbed stingers into your skin, and that's also a part that holds their nerves, muscles, and digestive tract. That's why a bee can't survive losing a barbed stinger. Yellow jackets don't lose anything. Running away won't help. They'll follow you for several hundred feet if necessary. If you're near the water, don't dive in, because they'll patiently wait for you to run out of breath and go back to the surface. Let's walk into their nest. It's probably a hole in the ground because they mostly find some abandoned burrows. They use clay or mud to give it a firmer structure. One opening will take you beneath the surface, into their fascinating underground city with thousands of others, ready to defend their home and aggressively drive intruders away. These super nests can develop when winters are mild and there's a lot of food. For example, your pet's food or garbage. This way, more insects will survive the cold winter months. Then, some workers survive and continue with all operations in the nest, which only gets bigger and bigger. Such huge nests often have multiple queens. The bigger the nest is, the busier they are, so they're more likely to leave you alone even if you're somewhere around. Oh look, it's raining! They don't mind that much. During the hot summer days, they need water to hydrate anyway. If the rain gets too excessive though, it will drive them outside. Many wasp species are social, but there are solitary wasps too. They don't have a social organization. Each female builds its own nest and takes care of it. They mostly nest in the ground, but you can find them in rotten wood or hollow plant stems. A queen wasp can even find beetle tunnels in dead wood and make them her home. They feed on nectar, and you can often see them around flowers, preying on spiders or insects to feed their young.
So, you're at home, enjoying your evening tea under a warm blanket, when all of a sudden you see a huge, enormous mosquito. Its long and gangly legs have a span of your palm, and it clumsily bumps into all the obstacles it meets. Despite its awkward appearance, it's still terrifying. What if it carries malaria? What if it eats you alive in your sleep? Slowly, not to draw the monster's attention to yourself, you get out from your soft chair and run for it into the bathroom, lock yourself in there, and open the browser on your phone. After a few seconds, you draw a ragged breath of relief. Turns out it's just a crane fly, not a mosquito at all. It might look like a ferocious beast, but it's actually peaceful and even defenseless. Many crane flies don't even have mouths, so they don't eat at all, and those that have a mouthpiece will only munch on sweet flower nectar. Crane flies are really clumsy in the air. Their rather short wings are no match for their huge bodies and long legs, so they're slow and it's easy to catch them. Birds and frogs, as well as bats and cats, love them as a treat. The only way they can avoid being eaten is by losing a limb. Their legs easily break off even when nothing touches them. And if you're still unconvinced not to scram and set your house on fire when you see one, consider this. Crane flies can tell you if the water pool you're about to swim in is of good quality. If you see these bugs on or above the water, you're good to go. Even more, fishers often make their bait look like the crane fly larva. This makes it more appetizing for the fish. But while Googling, you get engrossed with reading up on some other weird and crazy bugs. For example, here's the human-faced stink bug. Nah, they don't really stink, at least for humans. They give off pheromones that attract other stink bugs, letting them know there's food nearby. The most peculiar feature of it is in the name. A man-faced stink bug has a face on its back with 3 black dots drawn in red. The vibrant color of its back warns predators that the bug isn't tasty or even poisonous, while the black eyes draw attention from them to the vulnerable head. Saddleback caterpillar's name is also quite telling. It looks like some creature from another planet with a bright green saddle over its back. And the saddle is, sadly, the only safe part of the thing to touch. The spines you see all over the rest of its body are sharp and highly poisonous. If you want to give it a friendly tap on the back, make sure you don't touch anything else. Well, we have a titan beetle next. Meet the largest beetle in the whole world. It can grow as long as your entire palm, complete with fingers. Seeing one in the wild can be a shocking experience, especially if it flies right in your face. But don't fret. Thankfully, this giant is placid and won't bite you if you don't mean it harm. Still, if you make it angry, never let its mandibles touch you. The bug will hiss and bite, and what such snap can crack a pencil in half. What's interesting, an adult titan beetle doesn't feed at all. It doesn't need food to survive. As a larva, it gets enough energy to keep it well-nourished even when grown up. Ooh, I love that ability. An even more menacing-looking bug is a giant weta. Living in New Zealand, these cricket-like creatures look like someone forgot to lock the portal to the infernal. A massive, beefy body with 6 thorny legs, long alien-looking antennae, and big mandibles that just might cut steel. Well, in fact, these giant insects are quite peaceful and won't bite unless provoked. And even if they do, it's not as bad as you might think. There are videos with wetas biting hands of people holding them and doing no harm at all. So don't let it scare you, even though such an insect might weigh more than a full-fledged sparrow. Atlas moths look like they have 3 heads, 2 of which are serpents. These pretty nocturnal flyers have strange shapes on the tips of their wings that look like snake heads. This seems to be their mode of defense from predators. And that's also why they're sometimes called cobra moths. In Southeast Asia and India, where they normally dwell, atlas moths are often found on butterfly farms producing silk. And that's some sight. The wingspan of one such moth can reach 10 inches. That's larger than your hand. Peacock spiders are perhaps the cutest arachnids in the world, second maybe only to their jumping cousins. They're so tiny, you probably wouldn't even notice one scrambling through your kitchen. But if you get a chance to take a closer look, do it. Peacock spiders are beautiful. They have large, beady eyes, a shiny blue and red coat, and cute fuzz on their body and legs. And their mating dance is something else entirely. Too bad they only live in Australia. Another moth on the list, the hummingbird moth. Remember the atlas one, how huge it was? Well, this one's as big as a hummingbird and holds much more resemblance to its namesake than that. The speed at which it flutters its wings, the long tongue to drink flower nectar, and even the sound it makes when flying, all of it makes you wonder if it's really a moth after all. Of course, the fuzzy critter is absolutely safe, and you should consider yourself lucky if you ever see one. Long-horned orb weaver spider is one of the most unusual arachnids in the world. It's just your regular spider in all respects, but for some reason, it boasts 2 long curved horns on its back. The back itself is bright orange to ward off predators. Red means danger. But scientists are still unsure why this spider needs those prongs, so there's a web of mystery for you. The soft rustling of leaves underneath, a pile of them slightly moving, and a big mighty horn shows up. It's the Hercules beetle, one of the largest beetles on the planet. Almost half of its size comes from that horn on its head. Thanks to this wonderful appendage, you know exactly it's a male. Females don't have it at all. Yet the name comes not only from the horn, but from the amazing ability of this giant to haul extremely heavy loads. Its strength is second only to dung beetles. A Hercules can carry as much as 850 times its own weight. If you ever see a bug with 5 heads wearing a pointy cap, no, you're not on another planet. It's a Brazilian treehopper. Straight from a sci-fi movie and onto your screens here, this insect is a real mystery. It's small and secretive, and much is still unknown about it. No one knows why exactly the tree hoppers have these fuzzy balls on their heads. But they've only got one head after all, that much is certain. Going for a swim in a freshwater pond somewhere in the African tropics. Watch your toes, you can get a giant water bug hunting them. It's a predatory bug and the largest of its kind. With those huge pincers, it's no wonder it's commonly known as an alligator flea and a toe biter. The bite of this water-dwelling monster is really quite powerful. It grabs its prey with the front legs and then slowly munches on it. And when I say it's a predator, I mean it. Giant water bugs' favorite food is fish and amphibians. Despite their name, scorpion flies aren't related to scorpions. They get this moniker thanks to their tails, which look a lot like the notorious arachnids. Seeing a flying scorpion is a daunting sight at best, but fear not, these critters are small and gentle, and they can't even bite you. Only the males have such a tail, and they use it to attract females. Hey! What do you imagine when you hear the words walking stick? Certainly not a bug, but that's exactly what it is. Look at this twig and try to guess. Is there something alive on it or not? Yes and no. This twig is not a twig at all. It is a walking stick. These insects have developed a fascinating camouflage. They're long and unassuming, able to stay still for hours on end, which makes them look like dry twigs. But as soon as you touch one, it scrambles away on its gangly legs. Thanks to their appearance, predatory birds often miss walking sticks in the dense foliage, and their Australian kin give off a pleasant scent, something like peanut butter. Ooh, yum. Harlequin beetle looks formidable, and it is. This bug's body reaches 3 inches in length, and its front legs are often even longer than that. They help it crawl on trees, getting from branch to branch, and males also use them to impress females. Ooh la la! Despite the looks, harlequin beetles aren't really dangerous. They won't bite you even if you corner them. And if you, by any chance, grow cabbage in your backyard, you probably would try to corner them. These bugs feed on its leaves. Still, better not to touch them with your bare hands. They exude a foul-smelling liquid that both stinks and stings, causing skin irritation. Wear those gloves, will ya? You know what also stinks? Now, besides my socks, squash bugs. If you have a garden patch, these pests can be more than just a nuisance. They could spoil the squash you've been lovingly growing for the fall, hence the name. And if you squash them, they begin to smell just awful, hence the pun. Squash bugs are also often mistaken for stink bugs, but those are even more notorious. They begin stinking even if you so much as touch them. Wow, sensitive. Giraffe weevil is probably the most harmless little fella on this list, but not much is known about it yet. It gets its name from the long, spiny neck. This adaptation helps them build nests and fight over other weevils for food and mates. It may be placid, but the red covering of its wings lets predators know the bug is either foul-tasting or poisonous, or both. Likewise, you shouldn't eat monarch butterflies or their caterpillars. These beautiful insects are often kept as pets and were once almost chosen as the national insect of the US. But the little-known fact is that they're highly poisonous. Monarchs feed on milkweed, a plant containing a potent toxin. They've acquired immunity to it, and, as a side effect, butterflies accumulate the toxin in their bodies. This makes them a very unappetizing dish for birds and other predators. The concentration is so high that even humans that accidentally, or not, eat a monarch caterpillar can experience quite unpleasant consequences. Mealworm beetles are abundant almost anywhere, so you must have seen them. The most probable place to find them is a poultry farm, though. Mealworm larvae are often used to feed farm birds, and that's where the danger lies. Mealworms carry lots of diseases that can spread among birds and then to humans. They also like to eat chicken food and even insulation on farms, so they're not the best choice of a meal for birds, despite their name. And adult beetles produce a poison that's not harmful in small doses but causes allergy in high concentrations. If you happen to be at a poultry farm, make sure you avoid those beetles. Tiger beetles come in lots of shapes and colors, but they all have two traits in common: long thin legs and sharp sword-like mandibles. Those legs allow them to run faster than almost any other insect. So fast, in fact, that when they're on a hunt, they sometimes have to stop and look around for a few seconds. Their eyes and brains simply can't process the picture quickly enough, so they wait for the landscape to load around them. Most tiger beetles are harmless, but if you see one with an orange pattern on its back, don't touch it. These bugs produce cyanide to protect themselves, and this chemical can do a lot of harm both to animals and people. If you touch a tiger beetle and then rub your mouth or eyes, it might cause severe irritation. Oh look! See that wonderful pattern on a flower over there? Looks like an impressionist painting, and in a sense it is. That's a Picasso bug. These critters feed on plants and are mostly placid, but think twice if you want to take a closer look. It's not a ladybug. When touched, it'll emit a strong odor that's not exactly flowery. Worse still, you might have a hard time getting rid of the stench even hours after the encounter. Whew! Walking out of a pine forest, you notice a weird movement right beneath your feet. It looks like a little fuzzy train that's several dozen feet long. In fact, it's a defense technique of pine processionary caterpillars. They travel nose to tail in large groups to protect each other. They look really particular, but trying to disrupt the column isn't the best idea. Each car of this natural train has hundreds of needle-sharp bristles. If you touch any of them with your bare hand, they'll first cause sharp pain and then some other unpleasant reactions. Predators don't like pine processionaries for the same reason. Asian giant hornets live mostly in Asian countries, but they were reported in North America in 2019. These beasts are big, yellow, and vicious. It's impossible to confuse a giant hornet with any other bee or wasp. They're much larger and a lot more aggressive. But the worst thing about them is their stinger, which is more than 3 times longer than that of a honeybee. The stinger contains a really potent venom, and several stings from an Asian giant hornet can bring down even a large animal and a human too. And if that wasn't enough, these creatures can even spray their venom, aiming at the eyes. Needless to say, that's an unforgettable experience. Linomia is a rather unassuming little moth that doesn't pose a threat to anyone. But before it becomes a moth, it has to go through a caterpillar stage. And that's when you don't want to cross its path. Linomia caterpillars are covered in hair-thin bristles that contain a powerful venom. But even if you know not to touch them, you still might get pricked. Caterpillars perfectly blend in with tree trunks to add to their protection. A person might unknowingly lean on a trunk with linomias huddled on it, and they won't hesitate to stick those needles into the unlucky guest. If you get stung, immediately seek medical attention. Now, let's admit, all centipedes are terrifying, and perhaps one of the most horrible species is a Texas red-headed centipede. First of all, it looks like it's ascended from your deepest, darkest nightmares. A black sectioned body, dozens of yellowish legs that look more like claws, and a red head with 2 long horns. A picture enough to make me run for it in a split second. Whew, there I go. Being pretty large, these crawlers have a voracious appetite, munching on toads, lizards, and an occasional rat. Sometimes, when desperate, they can even catch a bat right in the middle of a flight. And of course, red-headed centipedes are venomous, fitting for such an appearance. Luckily, they're not interested in humans. And that's mutual. Now, this critter isn't large, but it's very defensive, meaning you don't want to cross it. Its name speaks for itself, the devil's coach horse. A total black bug that resembles an earwig. It will raise its behind and open its powerful jaws when threatened. This pose makes it look like a scorpion, and at this point, better back off. If you don't, the devil's coach horse will start to emit a foul stench and ooze unpleasant liquid from its mouth for defense. And if that doesn't scare you off, it will eventually bite, which is quite painful, you know. Just leave the beast alone, okay? Velvet ants aren't ants at all. They're a kind of wingless wasp that just look a lot like ants. These bugs don't form large colonies and usually live alone, hiding in tall grass. This behavior has given them another nickname, cow ants, because when a cow is grazing nearby, it might step on a velvet ant and get a painful bite in return. Humans also get bitten sometimes, especially if they walk barefoot. Velvet ants are venomous, but their venom is less potent than that of bees, so it's not really dangerous. Still, the pain from such a bite is serious. And if you want to squash this bug, good luck! They have an unusually tough carapace that protects them from other stinging insects and even birds. Puss moths get their name from their furry, fuzzy appearance. It's like they're little fluffy flying kitties. Moths might be cute, but their caterpillars, as always, should only be looked at, not touched. Despite the even fuzzier looks, a puss caterpillar is covered in thousands of hollow spines that break off the critter's back upon contact and inject their venom. And what a venom it is! Puss caterpillars are the most venomous caterpillars in the US. One sting of this little monster can result in days and even weeks of sickness. And if you're allergic to it, then I can only wish you best of luck.
Around 80% of all animals on Earth are insects. But how well do you know their world? Let's see if you can guess whether these amazing facts are myths or true. Here's the first one. Cockroaches can run on 2 legs, just like humans. Myth or true? That's correct. Cockroaches don't do it just for fun. Running on 2 legs is more energy efficient because it's easier for their little brains to process. If you take a closer look at the cockroach, you're gonna spot that all pairs of legs have different lengths. This creates unnecessary drag when the cockroach needs to reach high speeds. Their nervous system can get overloaded and confused by trying to control all 3 pairs of legs. So, it chooses to move just 1 pair, the rear legs that use energy most efficiently. Check this out. A full moon makes mosquitoes bite 500% more actively. Myth or true? True. Just like werewolves, mosquitoes get fierce when the moon is full. That's because they use visual cues and receptors to spot their next dinner, and it's way easier to do so when the moon is full. Mosquitoes spot movement by detecting infrared radiation emitted by warm bodies at distances of up to 115 feet. Salt marsh mosquitoes took this to the next level. They're such gourmets that they can travel up to 40 miles just for the sake of eating. Only male mosquitoes bite. Does it sound real? Nope. In fact, only female mosquitoes do bite people or animals because they need a blood meal to produce eggs. On average, they take in about 5 millionths of a liter during one feeding. Meanwhile, male mosquitoes prefer eating plant juices, such as nectar. It's enough for them to get the necessary sugar and boost their energy levels. And since males don't bite, they cannot transmit diseases. But females, on the other hand, can get infected with germs when they bite sick people or animals. Here's the next fact. Alligator ticks are called so because they can reach the size of a crocodile. True or false? That's false, but still, it's the largest aquatic insect on Earth. According to Guinness World Records, toe biter, or sometimes called an alligator tick, can grow to be more than 4 inches long, which is basically the size of an average leaf. They can be found around the world, but they're especially common in North America. Toe biters perfectly blend into the landscape because their dark brown body mimics the leaves of the wetlands. They're predatory by nature. Usually they eat small tadpoles and other insects, but sometimes they take down bigger prey, like snakes and even turtles. Those who experienced meeting these creatures claim that their bites are the most painful injuries a human can suffer. Flies can poison your food just by landing on it. Myth or true? Unfortunately, that's true. Not only are flies annoying, but they also regurgitate some of their stomach contents when they land on your food. And houseflies are just one of many fly species that do so. Ugh! It happens because flies don't have teeth. Instead of chewing, they use their straw-shaped mouth to slurp their food. They secrete digestive juices on their future meal as they land on it, and once the food has been liquefied, the flies are able to slurp it up. But the real danger lies with their feet, not their mouths. Flies spend a lot of time walking on all sorts of dirty things, which can be sources of disease. Studies have revealed that flies can transfer bacteria even if they're only in contact with an area for a short period of time. So, if you ever spot some flies hanging around your food, it makes sense to cover it. Or, if you're concerned about your health, even forget about finishing your meal. Here comes the next fact. Females of toe biters carry their eggs on their backs. That's false. In fact, they lay eggs on their males' backs. After that, the future father carries the eggs as a backpack wherever he goes. As sweet as it sounds, this sight is still pretty disgusting, and it might send shivers down your spine. And more bad news. Even though they're called water bugs, they can fly. So don't just watch out below because they can approach from the sky. Ugh. Next fact. Ants are one of the most dominant animals on the planet. True or myth? True. Collectively, ants alone contribute up to 20% of the entire animal biomass on the planet. These creatures are pretty ancient. They appeared around 160 million years ago and took over a wide variety of ecological niches. As a result, today they count about 16,000 different species with over 10,000 trillion individuals. Check this out. Butterflies taste with their feet. Myth or true? Sounds like fiction, but it's true. Butterflies have taste receptors on their feet to help them find their host plants and select food. Female butterflies land on various plants and drum the leaves with their feet. This technique helps them squeeze juices from the plant. Their legs have spines with receptors, helping them to detect the right match of chemicals in the plant juice. And once a female butterfly finds the proper plant, she lays eggs. Also, both male and female butterflies step on their potential food to sense the content of dissolved sugars. Just imagine what human restaurants would look like if people were tasting with their feet. Next fact. Butterfly wings are transparent. Does it sound real? That's true. Butterflies have the image of colorful and vibrant creatures. But, strangely enough, their wings are transparent. They are covered with thousands of tiny scales, and these scales reflect light in different colors. But underneath all of those scales, a butterfly wing consists of several layers of chitin. It's the same protein that makes up an insect's exoskeleton. These layers are so thin that you can see right through them. Butterflies only live from 2 to 4 short weeks, and you can determine their age by the quality of their wings. With age, the scales begin to fall off the wings, leaving transparent spots. Fruit flies were the first living creatures to be sent into space. Myth or true? True! A long time before sending dogs or humans into space, scientists studied fruit flies' reactions to radiation and space flights. This helped to predict how space conditions and zero gravity might influence human beings. because we share many genes with fruit flies. And after several decades of research, on February 20th, 1947, fruit flies became the first living organism to go to space and return. Next fact: caterpillars have 2 eyes. Myth or true? That's a myth. In fact, the majority of caterpillars have 12 eyes called stemmata. If you look closely, you can see 6 tiny eyelets on each side of the caterpillar's head. One pair of eyes is usually placed closer to the antennae. It's easy to believe that 12 eyes would guarantee excellent eyesight, but that's not the case. A caterpillar uses them to distinguish light and dark and navigate its way. That's why sometimes caterpillars move their heads from side to side. Maybe they just love rap music. But scientists believe that it helps caterpillars understand the distance between objects. A few species of caterpillars have between 10 and 14 eyes, but these are usually more primitive forms, which also have several features making them different from other moths and butterflies. Scorpions can breathe underwater. Myth or true? That's false. Although scorpions are not very good swimmers, they can still store oxygen to survive underwater. And some species can hold their breath for up to 6 days. Scorpions can survive underwater thanks to the so-called book lungs, which actually look like a book. The pages of that book act like membranes that store oxygen. Since scorpions don't waste a lot of oxygen on dry land, they can just store the rest in their lungs. And once a scorpion enters the water, it has around 48 hours to hang out carefree. After that, it will need to come out of the water for the next inhale. And this cute little creature is called the northern pseudoscorpion. It's the breath-holding champion among scorpions. It can hold its breath for up to 17 days. Let's just hope it doesn't learn to fly.
You know, scorpions are interesting little creatures. 6 legs, 2 claws, and a powerful stinger. Now, what if humans also wore exoskeletons to protect themselves? So an exoskeleton's mainly made up of chitin, which is a complex material found in insects and reptiles. Thanks to their exoskeletons, these tiny creatures can defend themselves and perform acts of superhuman strength. If you wore a scorpion exoskeleton, you'd be able to climb up any building you wanted. With massive claws in the front, it would be easy to grab hold of things and even cut through them. Might be hard to open a bag of chips, though. But at night, you'd have problems: UV rays. They wouldn't hurt you or cut through you or anything, but you'd definitely glow in the dark. Not exactly ideal for sneaking up on someone. A scorpion's tail is venomous and packs a nasty sting. You could use it to sting anyone in your way. Plus, it's long enough that you could defend yourself from a safe distance. Scorpions live all over the world in some of the harshest environments, from freezing icy landscapes to scorching hot deserts. If it freezes, a scorpion can even thaw itself out under the sun. This next creature also has 2 claws and 6 legs, but it doesn't have a stinger. It's the mighty crab. Its shell is a lot more powerful than a scorpion's, and it's surprisingly quick. So you'd be seriously powerful in one of those. The downside is you'd only be able to walk sideways, and you'd be delicious to someone like me. There are almost 5,000 species of crab all over the world, each with special skills. In a crab costume, you'd definitely be a master digger. Sure, you'd be doing it sideways, but those legs and claws can get the job done. If there were crab-inspired bodysuits, they'd most likely be made for digging. You could even work underwater. You'd be agile, strong, and you'd look awesome. Humans in ant suits would dominate any construction site. Ants live in colonies around most of the world and rely on strength and numbers. But that doesn't mean each little ant's weak or anything, just the opposite. There are actually already exoskeleton suits out there to help humans do some heavy lifting. But to use the actual strength of an ant would be a game changer. An ant can lift around 1,000 times its own weight. In a group, they can drag a bird across a field without breaking a sweat. What's even crazier is that they can carry things while they're climbing straight up a wall, or even upside down. Wow! Imagine a group of humans dragging a jet fighter up the side of the Empire State Building. There wouldn't be any need for bulldozers or cranes anymore. Just strap into an ant suit and get her done. Buildings could be inspired by those huge underground ant colonies. Ants are amazing at making tunnels. Imagine wearing a bodysuit that flies through the air like a stealth craft. If you wore a Hornet suit, you'd have it made. They have a tough exoskeleton that's surprisingly light and easy to maneuver. Picture a fleet of strong flying acrobats. Oh, and don't forget the stinger. Most people think of hornets as pests, but they're not. They do a lot of good for the ecosystem, like eating up those pesky mosquitoes. Having a hornet suit would be essential for any kind of undercover work, not so much for office work. A strong aerodynamic bodysuit with a powerful stinger? Hey, sign me up! An armadillo uses keratin to make its bodysuit. You know, the stuff your hair and nails are made of? What makes it unique is that it's foldable and durable at the same time. It's made up of hexagon-shaped plates that go all over its back. When there's danger around, it can roll up into a ball. Scientists are studying how to make durable bending glass just like the armadillo's body plates. Humans wouldn't be 100% protected with this thing on, but they'd be able to withstand pretty much anything. You could jump out of a plane, no parachute, land on a rooftop, brush it off, roll off the edge, and land safely on a nearby car, all while being chased by tricked-out cars and helicopters. Nah, I've been streaming too many movies. Being one of the slowest animals on Earth does come with an advantage. You got a heavy shell on you 24/7 for protection. Just like armadillos, tortoise shells are made of keratin. What's sweet about its shell is that it grows with the tortoise. Crabs and other shelled animals have to keep replacing theirs as they outgrow them. Humans would be almost invincible if they wore tortoise suits, but they'd be insanely slow and draw a lot of attention. Still, if something goes down, you could just hide in your shell and wait it out. Hopping around from place to place would be pretty sweet, but what about flying? Grasshoppers can do both. They have a set of wings they tuck in behind them, which they unleash after their epic takeoff jump. Oh, and they come in all shapes and sizes, great for camouflage. Now, a grasshopper can jump around 10 inches high and 3 feet long. Far? Out? Well, that far. Anyway, it's all thanks to its back legs. Grasshoppers basically catapult themselves when they feel threatened or when they see something delicious. If you had a grasshopper suit, you'd be able to jump a whole football field in one go. You can forget about being stuck in traffic. It might not be the most powerful armor, but with those jumping skills and landing skills, getting your weekend shopping done would be a breeze. Or you could be the world's coolest pizza delivery person. Just imagine the tips. The biggest animal on this list doesn't really have an exoskeleton, but it does have a thick skin. This massive beast's one of the most powerful mammals on Earth, and it comes with a strong horn near its nose for protection. Any guesses? Now, it might look scary, but that humongous rhino's an herbivore. It's not going to eat you. But rhinos do attack when they feel provoked, so keep your distance. Their thick skin makes them look like a tank, and it keeps them nice and warm. Now, with your rhino suit on, you'd have a monster advantage over the average human. The thick skin suit would be really useful for extreme weather conditions, cold or hot. And a horn on the top of your head would send a pretty powerful message. And it's not just beep beep. Jaws that look like antlers? 6 legs? Meet the stag beetle. Its oversized jaws are used for impressing its friends and sometimes for a little wrestling. But don't worry, these fearsome jaws aren't strong enough to hurt you. A human stag beetle suit would be pretty weird if you saw one walking down the street. But who knows what people will be into in 10, 20 years? Maybe this will be the future of wrestling. Now, this reptile has the toughest skin of its kind. Crocodiles are fearsome animals, virtually unchanged since the days of the dinosaurs. Our modern-day croc is still top of the food chain, with scales on its back and a very soft underbelly. Its scales are made from some of the most durable materials out there. And don't forget that powerful jaw. It can crush watermelons like chewing gum. A human croc suit would be fast, strong, but mostly limited to hanging around lakes and rivers. It'd be a great thing to be wearing during a game of hide-and-seek, though. You're it! This last creature takes the grand prize, toughest exoskeleton ever. It's smaller than a rhino for sure. Presenting the Ironclad beetle. Even the name makes people's knees weak. This beetle has interlocking wing covers that make it twice as strong as it should be. But get this, it doesn't even fly. Yeah, it doesn't need to escape from danger. Whatever you throw at it, it can't be hurt, dented, or even crushed, not even by a car. These beetles can live up to 2 years, way longer than other beetles who only stick around for a couple of weeks or months. A human suit based on the Ironclad beetle? Wow, that name gets me every time. It'd probably be resistant to just about any collision. Walking through moving traffic would be like strolling in the park on a warm afternoon. This suit would be perfect for deep-sea exploration since it's resistant to pressure. That'd make it excellent for outer space adventures too. Well, meet the tiny terrors of our world. Fire ants. When they sting, they inject venom that can cause serious trouble. For most people, it's just a fiery sensation in raised bumps. But for others, especially those who are allergic to it, it's life-threatening. These ants set up their camps right under your feet. They're quick to swarm and are fiercely protective of their colonies. They show no mercy to intruders. Their stings are rated about 1.2 on the Schmidt Insect Sting Index, where 4 is the maximum. It feels like a sudden jolt, but the sensations are less burning than when a bee stings you. They originated in tropical regions like Central and South America, but now you can find them even in some temperate zones like North America. In their colonies, fire ants have a strict hierarchy: a queen, winged males and females, and different types of workers. They communicate through chemicals and sounds. The most famous member of this genus is the red imported fire ant. They've come from South America and invaded the southern U.S. They build large mounds, making farming difficult and damaging crops. It's almost impossible to control them. And on top of that, there's now the rise of another invasive species, the tawny crazy ant. This one poses a threat to native ecosystems. Turns out ants can be dangerously unfriendly. Colorful blister beetles are among the 10 most dangerous insects in the world. Luckily, they're not lethal to humans unless they go for you in a big pack. However, they pose a serious threat to large animals such as horses. Blister beetles produce a toxin called cantharidin, which causes skin blistering in humans. In the past, people believed it could treat warts and even rabies, and some even used it in love potions. However, it's a risky game. In the 1950s, a man was jailed for giving cantharidin-laced candies to 2 women, resulting in a tragic outcome. These beetles are not to be messed with. Handling them or ingesting them is very dangerous. They're attracted to alfalfa and hay. If a horse eats either of those, even a few beetles can release enough cantharidin to end it. This cute caterpillar from South America is called Linomia obliqua, and it's the most dangerous caterpillar on Earth. It's responsible for several fatalities due to its potent venom. It's the larval stage of the giant silkworm moth. When it grows up, it becomes a beautiful and harmless silkworm. But if you see them as youngsters, it's better to stay away. Its toxicity stems from venom-injecting bristles. They serve as a defense mechanism against predators. The poison messes up how your blood clots and can cause really bad symptoms like burning feelings, throwing up, kidney problems, and sometimes even lethal outcomes. A single bite probably won't lead to anything horrifying. It delivers only a tiny amount of venom. But these caterpillars tend to congregate, and they're quite good at camouflage. This increases the risk of multiple stings. Locusts themselves aren't dangerous to humans. They're ordinary, loud grasshoppers. But they're infamous for their swarming behavior. These swarms often happen when there's a dry period with no rain, and then suddenly a lot of rain falls and plants start growing fast. Once it begins, it's nearly impossible to stop. They can become a destructive force within minutes. Throughout history, locust plagues have been devastating, wreaking havoc on crops and farmland. What's interesting is that the term locust can mean different things depending on where you're from. In some places, we're talking about cicadas, which are also known for their loud sounds. But true locusts are ancient creatures, relatively unchanged since the Triassic era. They're among the oldest insects on Earth. Wasps, hornets, and even bees can be extremely dangerous, especially to those allergic to their stings. The Asian giant hornet is the largest of the wasps. It can reach up to 2 inches in size. It packs a powerful venom that can cause serious discomfort and even spray into people's eyes. There's an even more venomous species in the Philippines called Vespa luctuosa, not to be confused with Expecto Patronum. Any Harry Potter fans? Anyway, fatalities because of wasps or bees are rare but not unheard of. In the UK, about 10 people pass away each year from bee or wasp sting reactions. Always stay cautious. All these insects are very territorial and will fiercely defend their hives. When provoked, they signal danger to nearby bees and instigate a mass defense effort. If you need to handle them, it's best to call professionals. A flea is tiny and humble, but it left a colossal impact on human history and health. They're not just annoying pests, they're notorious carriers of various human conditions and are responsible for some of the worst outbreaks in history. Back in the 14th century, I forget where I was, but the bubonic plague wiped out over 25 million people in Europe, and fleas were a big part of spreading it. Fleas spend their lives searching for warm-blooded hosts to feed on, whether it's reptiles, mammals, pets, or humans. Despite their tiny size and absence of wings, they make up for it with impressive jumping abilities. They can leap 6 feet and jump over 1,200 feet in the air. A flea bite might seem like a minor annoyance, causing itching and inflammation, but a lot of them can lead to anemia in their hosts. Of course, the most dangerous part about them is the viruses, bacteria, and worms they transmit. Kissing bugs mostly live in both Americas, with smaller populations in Africa and Asia. Despite the friendly name, they're great at passing on bacteria, viruses, and parasites. One of the parasites they carry is Trypanosoma cruzi. It's the culprit behind illnesses that affect millions globally and claim thousands of lives each year. What's interesting is that symptoms don't often appear until 10 or 30 years after being bitten. They typically manifest as heart failure, digestive issues, or nervous system problems. They don't actually kiss you, they suck on you and are attracted to their prey by breath. If you breathe through your mouth, you're a target. They're messy biters, often biting chaotically and almost uncontrollably, which only adds to their unsettling nature. Many have heard of the tsetse fly, an unusual and scary insect from tropical Africa. These flies are carriers of one of the most devastating human diseases, sleeping sickness. Similar to the kissing bug, the tsetse fly transmits trypanosomes, the parasites that cause sleeping sickness. They acquire this parasite from an infected host or from within the fly's own body. Sleeping sickness doesn't strike immediately. After a bite, it takes 1 to 3 weeks for symptoms to appear: fever, headaches, joint pains, and itchiness. As the illness progresses, it can invade the nervous system, leading to confusion, insomnia, and loss of balance. Without treatment, it can result in a coma and then a fatal outcome. Luckily, sleeping sickness can be treated, and the number of losses is declining. The tsetse fly holds historical significance too. Its presence has hindered European colonial expansion in Africa. And the crown of the most dangerous insect in the world goes to the mosquito. It's no surprise why. Despite their small size, they wield a massive impact. They're not only responsible for more human losses annually than any other animal, but they've also left an indelible mark on history. These little insects influenced the rise and fall of entire civilizations. For example, malaria significantly weakened ancient civilizations, such as in Rome and Greece. What's interesting is that it's not just the mosquitoes themselves that are dangerous, but the parasites. Bacteria and viruses carry and transmit through their bites. These tiny horrors spread a buffet of diseases. Despite malaria, there's also yellow fever, which, just like with the tsetse fly, hindered European colonization efforts in tropical regions. The scariest one of them is the Anopheles mosquito. It's the apex predator of the insect world. It's responsible for more fatal outcomes and illnesses than any other insect. So, how do we combat these tiny yet mighty foes? With prevention. We need to eliminate standing water in our surroundings and practice mosquito control measures. We must always stay one step ahead to protect ourselves and our communities from dangerous insects. So Barry is running along the shore of a lake as fast as possible. He knows that if he stops, his life will turn into a nightmare in no time. 1,000 mosquitoes are about to bite him. But what he doesn't know is that he'll be okay after all. So don't be afraid, Barry, and stop. Mosquitoes are slow. They fly at a little more than 1 mile per hour. And you can't run forever. So after a couple of hours of pointless running, Barry stops. He sweats and emits a smell attractive to insects. One little mosquito flies up to him. It buzzes next to his ear, sits on his sweaty neck, and bites. The insect pierces the skin with a special mouth apparatus called a proboscis. The mosquito starts pumping blood through this needle. Its saliva gets into Barry's body and causes an allergic reaction. More precisely, it's Barry's immune system that starts this reaction. It perceives the mosquito saliva as an enemy and sends a unique chemical substance to the bite site. The fight between this substance and the invader causes an allergic reaction, redness, swelling, and the worst thing, itching. Barry can scratch himself for several hours or even days. It all depends on how his body will react to the bite. The mosquito fills up with Barry's blood and flies away. It does it not for pleasure, but because it needs to lay eggs. Protein in the blood is necessary for these insects to reproduce. Their eggs can't grow without this substance. Yeah, almost all biting mosquitoes are female. Male mosquitoes prefer plant and flower nectar. Hey, they're guys. So the female mosquito flies away from Barry. She sits down on the shore of the lake where a large mosquito base is located. Here, these insects lay eggs, drink water, and chill in the sun. There are several 100,000 of them, and they're all hungry. The female mosquito brings with her the smell of Barry's sweat, which is attractive to the rest of the mosquitoes, too. There are about 3,500 species of these insects on Earth. Some of them love the smell of sugar, perfume, or deodorant, and some enjoy the smell of dirty feet. Now, your attractiveness to mosquitoes also depends on what you have eaten today. Lots of candies and chocolate? Great! Now, mosquitoes feel a faint sweet smell coming from you. Have you eaten garlic and onions? Mosquitoes probably won't want to deal with you. And not only they, most likely. So, the smell of Barry's sweat is perfect for all mosquitoes on the shore. They go mad, take off, and head for the poor guy. If you walk near the water when the evening comes, if you're sweaty, wearing black clothes, and have O-type blood, then you have all the chances to get bitten by mosquitoes. And Barry meets all the criteria. The first mosquitoes land on Barry's feet. They bite him and start pumping blood. One tiny mosquito can draw a droplet of blood the size of half a grain of rice. It's nothing at all. But several dozen of these bites? It's bad. Barry fights mosquitoes off with his hands, but the insects keep coming. They can't miss such a delicious dinner. 10, 20, 50, 100 mosquitoes. They cover Barry's legs. The skin swells and turns red. Barry feels a burning sensation. His immune system is working at 100%, trying to reduce the damage and drive the enemies away. But the more actively Barry's body defenses work, the worse he feels. Mosquitoes sit on his hands and on his wet t-shirt stuck to his body. Yes, their mouthpiece can pierce a thin layer of fabric. Barry tries to run away. He stumbles over a rock and falls. Some insects finish their feast and fly away to tell their friends about the free food. Mosquitoes from all over the lake come to try Barry. 200 mosquitoes are drinking his blood. 3, 5, 7, 900. Now, 1,000 mosquitoes have bitten him. Together they have pumped out a small glass of blood. But the worst thing is, they continue biting him. Nothing can stop them now, even though they were supposed to bite him only 1,000 times. Well, the only chance to escape is water. Barry, ignoring the itch, gets up and runs to the shore of the lake. Meanwhile, 100,000 mosquitoes have already bitten him. Sorry, Barry, but we have to entertain the audience. Don't worry, your recovery will be fast. He's getting closer and closer to the water. Mosquitoes are flying in front of his face, so he can't see the road. But Barry keeps running, waving his hands. Meanwhile, you know this moment when you're sleeping and one mosquito flies into the room through the window? Just one. But its squeaky sound is so annoying. And now, imagine 1,000,000 mosquitoes making this noise. It's like a saxophone playing high notes. Sorry if you're a sax player. Well, Barry is slowing down. He's exhausted, and his heart is beating too fast. He no longer feels bites and itches. His body is becoming weak, but he's still moving toward the lake. Mosquitoes have already taken 3 soda cans of blood from him, and this is serious. Barry is running a fever and has clouded consciousness. His immune system is not coping. Barry can't run anymore. He's struggling to walk. It's getting harder to make every next step. The shore is only a few feet away, but it doesn't matter anymore since he has no energy to move. So he just sits on the grass and accepts the situation. He's lost a large soda bottle of blood, and this is a lot. This is probably the most large-scale attack of mosquitoes on humans. And then, at the very last moment, salvation appears. A frog croaks nearby, and another one. Several dozen jumping animals are approaching the shore. They release their tongues like spears and catch mosquitoes. This gives Barry hope. He makes a last-ditch effort to reach the lake. He jumps in. Yeah! What a relief! Cold, fresh water envelops his whole body and relieves the itching and irritation from the bites. He waits in the water while the frogs dine on the mosquitoes. The remaining insects fly away. Barry crawls out of the lake. He sees frogs catching mosquitoes and realizes that these annoying insects are necessary for our planet. Frogs live thanks to these tiny monsters. And besides frogs, there are many other animals that feed on mosquitoes. Lizards, spiders, bats, birds, turtles, it's a huge list. Mosquitoes are an endless source of food for them. One pair can lay 200 eggs. They grow fast and their lives are short. But if all these insects disappear, an ecological catastrophe may begin. Entire animal species may vanish from the face of the earth. The frogs that saved Barry wouldn't exist. Without frogs, the population of other insects, like flies, would begin to grow. They would reproduce uncontrollably. And then, like falling dominoes, other problems will follow. So, Barry, don't be angry at mosquitoes. It's just nature. You better deal with your itchy problem. His whole body is red, covered with little bumps. He starts scratching himself, but this doesn't help. He only makes it worse. As long as mosquito saliva remains in his body and the immune system fights it, Barry will feel this itch. Fortunately, there are many oils and ointments to alleviate these effects. But the best way to get rid of the problem is to ignore it. Barry just needs to distract himself with something. Then the urge to scratch will disappear. Barry has survived so many mosquito bites without harmful consequences. But some people have problems dealing with just one. It depends on whether a person has allergies. Some have a small itchy bump, and others have severe inflammation. As for Barry, wasn't he swell? Didn't he swell? Okay, I'll stop. The best way to protect yourself is to use insect spray. Now, Barry sprays himself with this substance before every run and feels safe. But let's have a look at another situation. What if Barry gets attacked by huge dogs? Hey, just kidding. Relax, Barry.
It's a lovely day for a boat ride in the swamp. If not for these mosquitoes, then today would be perfect. But for some reason, the mosquitoes keep getting bigger the further you go into the swamp. They started out as tiny, almost invisible insects, and can now be the size of your thumb. You can hear their buzzing as they whiz past you. You go deeper to investigate why they're so big. Eventually, you see a large cluster of mosquitoes the size of your hand buzzing around. They notice you and start flying toward you. You grab a branch and start swatting them away. You run back to your boat and try to escape, but they follow you, and some manage to land on you. You swat them away, but more mosquitoes pop out of nowhere, the size of a basketball. You start your boat and speed your way back to the mainland. As you arrive, you see everyone running away in a frenzy, panicking because of the giant mosquitoes. Some of them are as big as a large dog. People are ducking under picnic tables, while some are running back to their cars and driving away. You get off the boat and run toward the closest grocery store, along with dozens of people. The employees lock up the gates, but the large glass panels show the mosquitoes multiplying. They're getting bigger and bigger until you can see one as big as a car zipping by. It's so strong that it landed on an empty car and crushed it. Everyone inside is ducking away out of fear. You try to calm everyone down and not make any noise. The mosquitoes are landing on the glass panel, blocking out the natural light. It's getting dark inside. Someone turns up the volume on the TV to the breaking news. Mosquitoes are flying rampant all across the continent, destroying natural resources and infiltrating cities. People are advised to stay indoors until further notice. The mosquitoes notice that there are people in the store, so they try to get in by force. A car-sized mosquito flies around in the sky, unaware of what's happening below. Everyone hears some noise coming from the back room. The employees realize they didn't lock the doors. A large mosquito enters and knocks down everything. Everyone runs around in a panic while throwing random stuff at it. Some people grab a fire extinguisher and spray it until it flies to the back room. Some employees lock the door and barricade it so that nothing can enter. Everyone waits nervously. The TV broadcasts some live coverage of how giant mosquitoes are flying everywhere. A helicopter is forced to land because the mosquitoes are flying around wildly in the skies. Everyone shudders when they hear the sound of more mosquitoes buzzing around near the back door. Hours pass, and more mosquitoes keep coming endlessly. There are no people outside, and much of the urban and landscape design in the park is destroyed or overrun by giant insects. Some people eat whatever is available, while some are sleeping. A piece of breaking news interrupts the live coverage and shows that there will be armored buses ready to pick up people near the picnic site. However, the buses won't drive to hotspots since it'll be too dangerous. The only way to get on them is by being on the highway in 2 hours. Everyone tries to call their loved ones, but the cell towers have been knocked down, and no one can call anyone. The mosquito that broke in a while ago destroyed the only landline that was present. People are arguing about whether they should stay or go. More insects cover the only clear patches of the sky until the sun disappears. The people split into 2 parties, those who are leaving to catch the bus and those who want to stay. The employees know a back way that can quickly lead to the highway. The only problem is that it'll take around 20 minutes on foot, and there are no cars to use. The way is tricky. First, they would need to escape through the main entrance and head through the bushy forest behind the dumpsters. Over there, they can enter a building, possibly through the sewers, which will lead to the lake next to the highway. The first party decides to leave. They prepare supplies for the breakout. Every second, more mosquitoes arrive, covering the sky. They gear up with anything they can find to protect themselves. Mosquitoes are attracted to the carbon dioxide that people breathe out, and they know that there's a source coming from the grocery store. Once everyone is ready, they get some makeshift torches and light them up. They add some barbecue fuel to keep the fire going. You're part of the party that is planning to escape. The doors open, and everyone makes a break for it behind the dumpster. Many mosquitoes try to attack you, but the smoke from the fire repels them. Every second, more mosquitoes are filling the sky and the environment. Many people end up running back into the store since they couldn't make it past the dumpster to the other building. Eventually, the rest of the people, including yourself, run toward the building. But it's locked, and no one can break down the door. Plan B is to break the glass from a window and crawl inside. You grab a rock and smash the closest window. The only problem is that the mosquitoes can follow you inside. So without any options left, you pull through and run to the basement of the building to find the entrance to the sewer. Success! You found it, and everyone descends to the bottom. No mosquitoes in sight, just rats. You're walking knee-high in sewer water with it flowing past you, but it's only a few minutes until you reach the river. Another problem is that the sewer isn't going to the lake, but somewhere deep into the sewer channels. You follow it until you see what looks like an outlet. You make it out and are near a water hole where all the discarded sewage leads next to the swamp. The only problem is that you're not next to the highway anymore, and time is running out. More mosquitoes are swarming the air, but they don't bother buzzing next to you. You notice some cat-sized creatures floating on the water. These are baby mosquitoes, or the larvae, and they're coming your way. You and everyone else swim for your lives to the shore. The giant alpha mosquito soars into the air and swoops down to try and grab someone, but it misses. Everyone makes it to the thick swampy area where no giant mosquitoes can enter. Everyone covers themselves with branches to protect themselves. 15 minutes until the armored bus arrives. Since the mosquitoes can't enter, this will be the best place to hide until then. Darkness falls, and still no bus. It's been 3 hours, and nothing. The mosquitoes are still buzzing around, and everyone is getting uncomfortable under the thick bushes. After a while, everyone hears a roaring engine and sees lights flashing on the highway. Everyone gets up and runs to the bus, but you stop them to not draw the mosquitoes' attention. You volunteer to sneak out and stop the bus, and then everyone else can follow without drawing too much attention. You move a couple of branches, step over some tree bark, and crawl to the highway. You try to hold your breath so that you won't make any heavy breathing sounds. You reach the side of the road and wave your arms to stop the bus. It pulls over and the door opens. You signal the rest of the people to follow, and they follow your lead. Everyone is inside and safe. Some mosquitoes notice and start pecking on the bus, but the armor is sturdy. The bus drives off looking for other people along the road, and suddenly, a Goliath lands in front of you. The bus stops and sees a mosquito the size of a Boeing 747. It looks straight at you. It gets ready to attack, but the bus speeds under its legs and drives off. The mosquito takes off and tries to catch the bus, but you enter a tunnel to the other side of the mountain. After a few minutes, you reach an open area with no trees or buildings. The bus is speeding while dodging obstacles along the way. Finally, you notice you are near the grocery store where you were held up. The bus opens the door for everyone inside to be taken to a safe zone. You hear from the aid workers that the whole world is being overrun by these giant creatures. As you drive along, you see a hybrid mosquito that has 2 heads and a scorpion's tail. It's as tall as the Statue of Liberty, and it's ready to attack. Whatever is causing these mosquitoes to grow abnormally is also making them into hybrids and mutants. And you thought it was going to be a good Monday.
That's it for today. So hey, if you pacified your curiosity, then give the video a like